And looking like that's it, Chai? All right, so we'll call the meeting of the Monterey One Water Board of Directors to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Sand City. Here. County of Monterey,
Here.
Seaside,
Here.
Veranda,
Here.
Delray Oaks,
Here.
Salinas,
Here.
Pacific Grove,
Here.
Castroville,
Here.
Monterey,
Here.
Marina Coast.
Here, and we'd like to note that Director Smith is absent tonight, and in his place, Tina Rao from Pacific Grove is representing. And if we could ask her to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand and join me.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rao. We go to agenda item 4, additions to the agenda. Staff, are there any agenda additions?
No additions.
Directors? All right, seeing none, we'll go to agenda item 5, approval of the agenda. Could we have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All in favor on a voice vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Please show unanimous approval of the agenda. We get to agenda item 6, introduction of a new alternate board member, Mr. James Durbin.
He's not
He is not here today.
Not today.
He was
Okay.
here
Here last
meeting.
time.
He was here last time. Just want to make sure he will be an alternate when Mr. Stefani hopefully doesn't miss any meetings, but things happen, we know, so. All right. We get to agenda item 7, which is election of board officers. So I'm going to ask Director Church if he would give the nominations committee report and the proposed slate of officers.
Yes, glad to. Do we have drums? Drum roll?
Yeah.
So it was a really long and thought out nomination committee discussion on this, but we eventually decided on chair nominee to be Tyler Williamson and vice chair Ken Havino. So hopefully everybody will follow our recommendations.
Thank you very much. We will, there are no comments from the public, I suppose, on this item. Are there any? All right, we'll move on to agenda item 7B, which is to accept any additional nominations in the first case for board chair. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 7C and close the nominations. And we'll move on to agenda item 7D to vote to select. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, any abstentions? Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we would then move on to 7E. Are there any additional nominations for board vice chair? All right, seeing none, we'll close the nominations and move on to a vote on agenda item 7G to vote to select the 2025 board vice chair. All in favor of Director Habino, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Please show unanimous, and congratulations, Mr. Habino.
Thanks, Tom. You, Tom.
You get to take over the meeting.
Are you rotating?
Yes.
Well, can I just do it? Or am I moving?
Let's
Yeah,
go.
I guess.
You're moving.
Yep. I don't like being over here. It's all right. We'll miss you. All the cool guys are over.
I don't smell, okay?
there.
Maybe a little bit. I just had garlic, so.
You're moved from the whole realm of power there.
Don't forget us.
Yeah, down
They just-
to ordinary person.
Hello, Mayor.
Yeah, that's closest.
Yes.
Next to us.
Same here.
You can collect your initiation fee from them.
Oh,
Yeah.
Already fell.
Said we got initiation fee to sit over here.
Oh,
All right, and as we transition here, thank you, by the way, everybody for your support as me as the next chair. And speaking of the role as chair, we just wanted to give a little love and appreciation to our outgoing chair, Tom Moore. We have a resolution for you here, and I'll go ahead and read it aloud for everybody. Whereas Monterey One Water recognizes the service of Director Tom Moore, who served as chair of the Monterey One Water Board of Directors from February 2023 to February 2025, and as vice chair from February 2021 to February 2023. And whereas Chair Moore has served on the Marina Coast Water District Board of Directors as a publicly elected official for over 28 years. And whereas Chair Moore has contributed his vast knowledge, experience, and expertise in local and regional water utilization and public governance to the M1W Board. And whereas Chair Moore has been a staunch proponent of recycled water use, cybersecurity improvements, and on-site renewable energy production. And whereas Chair Moore has contributed countless hours of public service and provided critical insight and leadership during a period when providing cooperative water solutions for our communities is in high demand. And now therefore be it resolved that M1W hereby commends and extends public recognition and appreciation to Chair Moore for his service to M1W and district he represents. And with that, just giving you a little up, please give him a round of applause. Tom, do you want to come up? Official. Official, okay.
No, super cute.
Now just pinch my cheek. Did you want to maybe on your mic, or you can, maybe on your mic, you can go and maybe share a few remarks?
thank you, Chair Williamson. And I just want to say that I'd like to express my appreciation, obviously to staff, which we do fairly frequently, to provide this incredibly important and critical government service to our ratepayers and the public. But I also want to say thank you to all of my fellow current board members and past board members. You really made the time I spent as vice chair and as chair actually a pretty easy job to do. And I just want to acknowledge that most of the vast majority of you directors on the board, unlike me, where I've got one water focus, you come from city councils where you have all kinds of challenges and problems that you have to deal with day in and day out. So the fact that you come here and devote your time to this critical service, I think, is incredibly important. So thank you very much for doing that, and ask the public to give them a round of applause.
Anybody else want to provide any comments on the board? Okay. And with that, thank you again, Tom. Your years of experience have been very helpful for this board and getting us through some really challenging times. So we appreciate all your years of service. And I know you're not going anywhere. You're going to be right here.
Yeah, right.
So, and speaking of going somewhere, Anthony Rocha is no longer serving on the board with us, but we wanted and appreciate you being here tonight so that we can celebrate your years of service on the M1W board and the vital role that you played. So I'm going to go ahead and read the resolution to Anthony. Whereas Monterey One Water acknowledges the service Director Rocha provided representing the city of Salinas on the M1W Board of Directors from February 2024 to December 2024. And whereas Director Rocha contributed his insights and expertise in the board discussions and embraced his role as a problem solver to aid both urban and agricultural interests while on the M1W board. And whereas the city of Salinas and M1W have become examples of regional collaboration by using existing infrastructure to capture, store, and reuse unwanted wastewater resources as a new source of recycling. And whereas Director Rocha advocated for a robust customer assistance program, and now therefore be it resolved that M1W hereby commends and extends public recognition and appreciation to Director Rocha for his service to Monterey One Water and the communities it serves. So thank you, Director Rocha. Take my hand with this one. Grab it. That wasn't on the mic, right? All right.
I have a level.
All right, and oh,
Try to hold it straight this time.
you know.
Those are all good pictures.
Awesome. That's regional solutions. All right, and Anthony, if you want to, please feel free to make some remarks here.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to receive this, and I really enjoyed our opportunity to work together. During my time on this board, I felt that we really made some significant strides towards finding common ground and finding solutions to our water challenges and finding a way to bring the peninsula and the Salinas Valley together, which is critical if we're going to address this ever so non-controversial subject called providing cooperative water solutions. So I want to thank you all for your leadership and the opportunity to work with you all. I miss you all very much, but not enough to stay till 10 p.m. again. I will be leaving after this, but I look forward to seeing the amazing work you'll continue to do. We have some amazing staff here, amazing staff who work for this agency, and a really dedicated board. So thank you so much for this. It was an honor to serve with you all.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, Ed.
Any remarks, comments from the board? Please.
I just want to say thank you, Anthony. It was an honor serving with you, and thank you for blessing us with laughter and jokes throughout the past time that we did serve together. It was truly inspiring to see your motivation, your intentional questions, but more than anything, your commitment to the constituency of the city of Salinas. I think that's something that's commendable of you. You were always forward-thinking, always willing to learn and teach us things. And I think that's what's important from this board, that we were able to move together. And sometimes, although we didn't agree, we did leave everything behind at the meeting and outside of these chambers. We got a pleasure of knowing you and learning a little bit more of Salinas. And I think that's what I'm deeply grateful for your leadership and for your charisma that you brought to this board. So thank you.
Well said. Well said. Anybody else, please?
So I just have one question of staff about former Director Rocha. Does he now hold the record as the youngest ever member of this board?
I would hope so. Yeah, we believe so. Actually, we can check that though.
Record maker, congratulations.
Thanks, Anthony. All righty. And with that, we'll move on to item number 10. I'm sorry, number 9 is public comments. So open it up for public comments. Anybody on Zoom can use the raise hand function. All right, seeing none online, are there any in the room? All right, seeing none, we'll go to item number 10, consent agenda. Anybody wish to pull anything? All right, let's take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on any of the consent agenda items? All right, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion and
Move
deliberation.
approval.
Second for approval.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 11, committee reports. A is Budget Personnel Committee. Any questions on the committee report? Take it out to the public. Any public comment on the Budget Personnel Committee? All right, bring it back to the board for motion deliberation. Anybody?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And going on to item number B, Recycled Water Committee. Any questions? All right, we'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on Recycled Water Committee report. All right, we'll bring it back to the board for motion and deliberation.
So move.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to 12 action items. Number A is to consider adoption of Resolution 2025-04, approving a local cost sharing of $581,979 of Pure Water Monterey construction costs for City of Salinas Round 2 Stormwater Grant Project. And with this, I will pass it to. Are you sure? Just
Pretty
kidding.
sure it's Mr. McCullough.
Yeah, I'll pass it to Mike for this presentation. I should probably wait till the second meeting.
Yeah.
To
So this is a little bit of history here, this item. So if you kind of go back in time a little bit to July of 2020, the city of Salinas was putting together a grant package that was going to go into the state for some stormwater improvements near the diversion facility and near the pump station, as well as down at the pond facility. And so as part of that grant package, Monterey One Water submitted a letter of support saying, hey, we would be able to match up to $10 million worth of the AWPF construction costs to, cover the match for this grant from the city of Salinas to the city of Salinas. They were successful in obtaining the grant. They signed a agreement back in February 16th, 2021. And so at that time, they've been working to try to, design it and go out to bid and things like that. And so recently, in conversations with city staff, the bids came back higher than they anticipated. And I said, well, have you reached out to the state to see if there's any leftover funding? Because sometimes these grant programs will award funding, but then they'll pull it back or somebody doesn't use it. So you can see in the staff report, there was another $660,000 available in the grant program, but then the match needed to be elevated to make sure that it was equal. And so that's on the back part of that grant. You can see we're both contributing roughly the same amount. And so the city will be able to receive a $9.4 million grant to make these stormwater improvement projects. And then we're providing that $9.4 million match from the AWPF construction. So as far as the match is concerned, we've already expended these funds. This was, you can go back to 2014 to allocate these costs. So this isn't any new money that's changing hands. This is stuff that was it's kind of an accounting procedure at this point. And so just kind of being the neighbors that we are with the city of Salinas, and we know we've had some struggles here lately, but this is an opportunity for them to make some good improvements to their facility. Ultimately, we're trying to get to recycling more water, whether it's stormwater, industrial water, and these improvements will do that. So recommendation is the board to approve the resolution, and we'll get that to the state as soon as we can. Paul?
Yeah, if I may. So the only impacts to Monterey One Water is these funds that we have expended previously would not be available for us for future grants. So we are allocating it to the city of Salinas for their grant funds. So it is something that we've discussed in the past. I think in 2023, it came before this board, and that letter that Mike referenced, I sent to the previous city manager about the up to $10 million. So it's within that amount.
Okay. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. Any questions from the board at this time? Okay, we'll take it out to the public. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for motion and deliberation.
Move approval.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item is considering amending the February 25th, 2021 short-term outfall capacity lease agreement with California American Water Company for the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project test well. And with that, I will pass to Paul for staff presentation.
Thank you, Tyler. So this is the same item that we heard in January, but we have modified the agreement based on some comments we received from the board of directors. Just a brief history. This is for the test slant well that Cal-Am has out near the CMEX property. It discharges what it pumps into our outfall. What it pumps is primarily seawater, and it goes out our outfall. At this point in time, I think it's only a monthly test of the pumps that go for about 4 hours, so we're not seeing a significant amount of flow. The changes that were done in this particular amendment include CalAm sending Monterey One Water the third-party reports that come in on water quality testing and flows, a specific statement within the agreement on that CalAm will comply with, of course, local, state, and federal regulations and permits, but it's called out specifically the NPDES permit as well as the Coastal Commission permit. And then the third one, what was that, Jim? Now I'm forgetting it.
Charges.
Oh, our charges did increase. They were last calculated back in that 2021 timeframe. Allison was kind enough with Bob Holden to update those charges to current dollars. So that is reflected in this as well. It is a 2-year extension. Currently, the existing one terminates at the end of March. So we have a little time here, but we'd like to move it forward, and then it would be good for 2 years, like I mentioned. With that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Please.
Paul, how significant were the increases in the charges?
They were about, well, from a percent standpoint, large, so I'm not going to say that one. They were being charged around $20,000. We're at about $30,000 now, ballpark.
And attributed to just hadn't been updated in time or?
Just, it had not been updated, and we took a closer look at the valuation of the outfall itself, because the existing valuation throughout the useful life is part of the calculation for a capacity fee, if you will. Another thing is how much time our staff spends on it, which actually is significantly different than it was back in 2021, because it is not, like I said, it's operated only on a test basis per month. So some of the things changed, but the total amount went from 20,000 to about 30,000.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, we'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing no takers, we'll bring it back to the board for motion and deliberation.
Move approval.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we will go on to item number 12C. Update on negotiations between Monterey One Water and Marina Coast Water District regarding outfall capacity negotiation, cooperation, and funding agreement. With that, I'll pass it to Matt.
Yes, good evening, board members. I'm Matt Thompson, your Director of Engineering. For many months, we've been working with Marina Coast Water District staff to obtain permission needed to complete the expansion of the Pure Water Monterey project, particularly the pipeline segment that will connect the eastern and western injection well fields. A short segment of this pipeline crosses parcels of land owned by Marina Coast Water District. The transaction has been complicated because Marina Coast requires Monterey One Water to provide a path forward for them to connect into our ocean outfall for the purpose of discharging brine from their planned desalination facilities before they will agree to allow us access to complete the pure water pipeline. The issue came to a head in January when we had to stop forward progress on construction of the pipeline. On February 7th, I prepared and delivered a draft outfall capacity negotiation, cooperation, and funding agreement to Marina Coast that would provide a path forward for them to access our outfall for discharge of brine from their planned desalination facilities. The negotiating agreement is in the same form as an agreement our agency entered into with California American Water Company in fall of 2023. We had provided essentially the same draft negotiating agreement to Marina Coast in September of 2023, but they chose not to act upon it at that time. A copy of the draft negotiating agreement is attached to the staff report for this item. The draft agreement anticipates our agencies will work cooperatively to negotiate the terms and conditions of a long-term outfall capacity lease We will prepare designs and conduct any technical and environmental analysis and review needed to determine the feasibility of outfall improvements. We will pursue any permits or any amendments of existing permits required. Marina Coast will reimburse our agency for actual costs incurred to complete this work. On February 12th, Marina Coast came back with many requested changes to the draft negotiating agreement. As a member agency of Monterey One Water, Marina Coast would like to be treated a little differently than Cal-Am, which is a reasonable request. However, many of the changes Marina Coast requested are not acceptable, so we have begun a negotiation process. Last Friday, February 21st, Jim Gilpin and I had our first negotiation meeting with Marina Coast staff and attorneys. The meeting was productive. Jim and I communicated our commitment to working cooperatively with Marina Coast to enable them to discharge brine into our ocean outfall. I requested Marina Coast provide a detailed written project description of their planned desalination facilities so that we may begin technical analysis and permitting work. Marina Coast expressed commitment to paying their fair share of costs for the technical and permitting work and any necessary physical modifications to the outfall. Most importantly, from my perspective, Marina Coast committed to provide the easement documents needed for us to resume work on our pipeline construction by this Friday, February 28th. Although negotiations are now headed in the right direction, we still need some more time to work out the terms of the negotiating agreement before it will be ready for approval and signatures. So this item is really an update. We're requesting you authorize the executive officer to continue negotiations with Marina Coast Water District, and then if appropriate, enter into a negotiating agreement. That's all I have at this time. Jim and I would be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
So before we enter into the agreement, it'll come back to us? Is that correct?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
The board will have the final say. So let's assume that the negotiations go well. We'll bring it back to the March board meeting for your consideration.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, let's take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? Please.
Mr. President, members of the board, thank you. I'm Garrett Hurdle. I'm the district engineer for Marina Coast Water District. I was in the meeting with Matt and Mr. Gilpin on Friday. I just want to voice my appreciation of the willingness of our two entities to work together on this, and we're looking forward to taking all of these projects to completion and to success. So thank you.
So thank you so much. All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the board for motion and deliberation.
Do we need a motion since this,
That's just an update. That's fair.
since it's just an update?
Yes, nope, that's a good point. All right, any last comments before we move on to the next item? All right, with that, we'll go to item 12D, review billing options and consider approval of a customer assistance program for FY 25-26. With that, I'll pass it to Paul for staff presentation.
Thank you. So this was an item that was requested by the board to bring forth this board meeting for discussion on changing billing partners. Much of the information obviously is in the staff reports, but I want to highlight a few things that were discussed at the Budget Personnel Committee. So as you all know, we tried to do this last year, moving our third-party billing from a vendor to the county is the effective way it would happen. Our current vendor, and as we have for many years, it's you got to bill every 2 months. With the county, it would be a fee on the tax rolls, on the county tax rolls. So it would be twice per year. The revisiting of this, we've tried to refine things a little bit more to try to address some of the concerns that we heard last year from the board and some of the members of the public. The recommendation that came out of the Budget Personnel Committee, and sorry, I'm going to read what you already have before you and probably have read, is to pursue collection of our fees with Monterey County as a new billing partner, work with our member entities to move them also to the property tax rolls. And I'll tell you in a little bit who that impacts within all of you. And also schedule, advertise, and hold a public meeting on June 30th as required to move to the tax rolls. We also wanted to look into an opt-out program on whatever that may look like and bring it back for consideration next board meeting. And lastly, initiate a customer assistance program that we had talked about last year when we were moving through this process to help alleviate any financial stress that this may cause. I want to point out this particular item is looking for some direction from the board, but there is one action which is moving forward with that customer assistance program. The reason for that is just the time frame to get people signed up and administratively get them going. With that as a backdrop of what BPC's recommendations were, I wanted to highlight 3 actions that this board would see before them, before this all goes into effect. One would be hopefully at the next board meeting, March 31st, if so directed by the board, is you would approve a resolution that must be by 2/3 to move our billing from the third-party vendor to the county. Then that public hearing that I referenced, there'd be a public hearing and annual rate report, so a resolution then, June 30th. And then lastly, in July, updated MOUs with member entities on the collection through the county. In reference to our member entities, at this point, I might ask Mike or Rachel to help me out with this. Monterey and Baranda and I guess Moss Landing through Castroville are already on the tax rolls. So the members we'd be working with between now and the end of the year, fiscal year, is Salinas, Seaside County Sanitation Districts, and Pacific Grove. Marina Coast has expressed an interest that would also come to the March board meeting for the board's consideration to do their own billing for their sewer service charges. So just to recap, there are 3 action items that would be coming at you depending what you all say here today. In reference to the customer assistance program, the way we've structured it thus far is fairly consistent to what we were doing last year, is we're going to try to cap it at about $200,000 of benefit. It is identified in here what that looks like. That $200,000 would be out of non-rate funds that we have. Just from the standpoint, we can't use rate money, if you will, for an assistance program like this, but penalties, liens, things like that, non-rate funds, we could use. That $200,000, I think, is once again somewhat consistent with what we said last year. The administration would come out of that also. So with that, what we're asking the board for tonight is some direction regarding the billing procedures going into the fiscal year 25-26 and approval of the implementation of the customer assistance program. With that, we can answer some questions. Certainly, I would probably ask Mike and or Rachel to help out as they are much more involved in the details of all of this.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Maybe we can go down the line. I think it's prudent maybe to hear from everybody. So who wants to start? I'm giving 2 options here. Tom, go ahead, please.
So this is a question for Paul, which was just catalyzed by your remarks that certain of our member agencies are already billing for their own collection charges on the county tax rolls, but they still aren't billing on the county tax rolls for that set of parcels, our charges. Would it be possible, and maybe this isn't a question for our general manager, maybe it's a question for Mr. Gilpin, but would it be possible to have an entire city decide to opt in on our charges or not? In other words, could we go member agency by member agency, in which case I would presume that if a member agency said, yes, we want to go to the tax rolls with Monterey One water charges, the rest of us would vote 2/3 to say, sure, have at it. And if the city said, no, I don't want our city to go to the tax rolls, we'd recognize the desires of that city. I mean, is that a possibility? And I will point out that we went into this whole process for two main reasons. One is it was costing us a pretty penny to do all this billing with an outside contracting company. We didn't have the staff to do it ourselves. Their prices were going up. And two, they'd had some pretty significant glitches in the billing process. So we wanted a less expensive billing process and a more reliable partner. If we did this hybrid thing and some cities decided, no, we want Monterey One Water, stick with some third-party billing company, I assume we'd talk about those customers bearing the full cost of that.
So the way we addressed it last year, Tom, was
All or nothing, right? Pretty
well,
much.
all or nothing except, and I'm sorry, I'm going to use Salinas as an example because I remember talking to Renee about this. At this point, it looks like we're moving to the tax rolls. So, you can move to the tax rolls also with us, and we'll have an MOU, and it's the same with all of you, every member entity. Or you can establish your own billing department and take over your side of the billing, not unlike Marina Coast is proposing doing. And those were sort of the two options. It wasn't that we would have a third-party biller and do a subset. It was, we're moving
Right.
to the county, and every member entity could do what they would like.
So I guess I'm asking, would it be feasible, and maybe the rest of the board would want to weigh in on this, to have a menu option, so to speak. So as an individual entity, you could do all your own billing for your collection system and Monterey One Water charges, or you can go to the tax rolls for everything, or you can ask Monterey One Water to continue with a third-party biller. But I think we'd all want to make sure that the costs were then appropriately allocated to those set of customers, if you see what I'm saying. So if Salinas, for instance, no offense, Mayor, decided to
Don't worry about it. I'll have something to say.
decided that they didn't want to go to the tax rolls and Monterey One Water was going to have to continue billing Salinas with a third-party biller, then there would be our normal rate plus whatever the cost of that particular billing activity would be, which would not apply to what would apply to some other entity like, say, Castroville going to the tax rolls completely, would just be the county's charge for doing that billing service for us. Am I making any sense here?
Yeah. So yes, that is technically feasible. That would not be a recommendation from staff for multiple reasons. One is just to stay picking on Salinas,
Feel free.
we would, if the board decides to move to the tax rolls, so our portion of the bill goes in the tax rolls, and then all the citizens of Salinas would receive this separate bill every 2 months. So just from a confusion standpoint, not to mention that there would be substantial cost to that. And I would also contend we would ask the board or the member entity that would like to stay with a billing such as that, do you want to look at a different option, since we have had some issues with our third-party firm? So I think there are a number of downsides to that particular option where we did not present, or we decided to move away from that last year and to something what we felt was simpler for the customer, less expensive for the customer, and also moved away from liens, because now all of a sudden now you're back into the lien business of people that don't pay one of the member entities' bills. How do we handle that? So the complexity is far greater with that third option you mentioned, Tom.
But if we go completely tax rolls, aren't we still in a different kind of lien business?
Far less, being that the tax roll
It's a
delinquency
bigger
rate
hammer,
is,
right?
well, and also the delinquency rate is far less.
Right.
We were seeing, Rachel, was it 5%, 5 to 7% for us, and is it 2% for the county? So you're looking at a significant difference in the
Sure.
numbers
Right.
of places that would be lean,
But it's still a lean business.
but the county would be doing it.
Right. Right. Thank you.
I just got a suggestion on our customer assistance program that we use the Easy Smart Pay as part of that customer assistance program. And we start, as we do our outreach right now, let's just start some outreach on that Easy Smart Pay and say, we're willing to help through our customer assistance program. So that people can get a good explanation from us about how it works, and then they can make their choice. It's just a suggestion.
I think that, I mean, I'll see if anyone throws anything at me. I think that makes sense from the standpoint, I know the county and Easy Smart Pay hasn't ramped up their marketing on the program. So this would be an opportunity for us to at least reach out to our customers to do that as well. Okay, no one threw anything.
All right. Thanks, Ron. Scott.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm tracking everything regarding the cities or entities that have decided to go to the tax rolls. So in that case, are customers being billed twice? In other words, they get charged through the tax rolls for the city or entity portion, and then they still are getting a Monterey One water bill. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct. So for instance,
Monterey.
Yeah.
Their portion of the sewer bill for their citizens are on the tax rolls. We send their citizens a bill every 2 months.
Mhm.
So yes,
Minus the city charges.
minus the city
Yeah.
charges.
I mean, that just, I mean, we're adding a layer of complexity to it. I mean, the whole goal was to be simple with it. So, I mean, I'm not sure how that all happened. I wasn't on the board when, you know, that was all occurring.
If I may, I just to describe the whole reason why the city of Monterey transitioned to the tax rolls for the city's portion of the wastewater fee was because the agency was discussing that. And it wasn't until the last meeting when we were going to make the final approval that the agency decided not to make that transition. And the city had made the decision, because we've already invested in engaging with the public and doing the Prop 218, and knowing that the potential for this conversation to come back up again with this agency, we figured let's just do it now and get it over with, and we don't have to worry about working with M1W on making that our portion transition again in the future.
So you were just leaning forward, hoping that, you know, the approval would come and,
That's correct.
okay,
Yep.
got it.
Then it would all be on the tax.
Right.
That's right.
Okay. You know, like I said, during the budget meeting, I just feel really bad for staff because of all the hard work that they put in, the amount of resources and money that went into it, and then kind of have it fall apart. Also, from an outside perspective, the reputation of the organization, leadership, the board kind of took a hit too. So when I put all those things together, I just want to make sure if we're talking about doing this, we got to make sure that we got support so we don't have a reoccurrence of what happened before. And it seemed to me the biggest concerns came from Salinas and Seaside. So for me, I would want to make sure that they're okay with the concerns from their constituents so that, you know, we all feel comfortable that, you know, once again, we're going to have success this time and not have a reoccurrence. So that would be my biggest concern.
Absolutely.
And that's those
Thanks,
are my
Scott. Thank you,
comments.
Scott. Tina.
Good so far.
Okay, thank you. Glenn.
I much as I think some of the agencies that have gone to the property tax rolls. One of the agencies that we were doing billing for was the Pajaro County Sanitation District. And so that moved over, even though we didn't. And I've had a number of feedback from people there and from some other issues that have drifted off into these tax rolls. And I don't think I can understress that it's really important that to do this means it really needs to be a good PR program onto it. People really need to understand, because you think you get things out, but then the billing comes out and people don't understand it. And it leads to complications. It leads to frustration. And what I'm particularly concerned on right now is not moving into this direction, but because we put a lot of effort into it a year or so ago and then stopped it. It wasn't even a year ago, was it? No, it's 8 months ago or something. And now we're looking at going back again. I have a concern that maybe it's just too soon. I mean, it's just going to be, people are going to see this again and they're going to be confused. And some are going to think, oh, well, they talked about this before and they didn't do it, so they're not going to do it now. I don't think now is the time really to do it, frankly. I have some hesitation on that. I understand the reason for doing it, but I don't think it's going to look good, actually, because it looks like we've stepped forward, we stepped back, now we're stepping forward. And well, we put it bluntly, it kind of, for the general public, it kind of makes it look like we don't know what we're doing then. And that's what I'm really concerned is the PR aspect onto this at this point. I think I'd prefer to see us just hold off a little bit and then come back onto it and have a really good public outreach program, which I know we did. We held meetings, but it was like, it wasn't getting across what we were trying to really achieve. So I'll leave it at that.
Can I?
Oh,
Just
please.
Not to the timing perspective, but to the outreach. Something I did not highlight that's on the table in the staff report is, well, frankly, last year we did a significant amount of meetings. When we say we did meetings, there was so many touch points with the customers, and you're right, there were some that it just didn't get through. Having said that, the way staff has designed it this time is the outreach plan would be actually June through December. So instead of doing it before it hits, we'd do it right before it hits in June, when we're moving forward and going after this, and learn everything we learned last year, change it up a little bit. But we're still going to have a percentage of people that don't engage. And even with the significant effort that staff did last year, we had those, as you saw. But that is stated in here on what that's going to look like. It's June through December of this year, if the board decides to move forward with it.
So are we saying that the public outreach portion of this is June through December? So that's when we would start having those meetings and scheduling them. And how, I mean, in terms of outreach, is it the same thing in terms of mailers, or is it via internet, or how is that going to be in terms of outreach?
Rachel, would you like to speak to this? And also, if you don't mind, just talking about the touch points last year, because I don't think the board necessarily understood the amount that was done in total.
Sounds good. Good evening. For the new and newer faces, I'm Rachel Godoyne on the Government and Community Affairs team. So just to recap a little bit about the outreach efforts that went into this process last year, it was a phased approach. So phase one actually started in 2023, where we spent 10 months engaging with the public to understand the top concerns related to moving to the tax roll. And then in February of last year, the board voted to implement the billing change. We then went into phase two of the outreach campaign, where we started to educate the customer on the change. We only got through a portion of phase two where we were educating the customer on the change once that public hearing occurred in June and the vote changed. So we did not get to fully execute all of the outreach measures we had planned to help bring the customer along through this change. And what is planned for the latter part of the calendar year as you ramp up to the tax bill was probably some of the most critical targeted messaging to help bring them through this change. Kind of rewinding a little bit. So that phase one outreach campaign consisted of about 10 public forums, half in English, half in Spanish, where we went out into the community. So we took our show on the road to help gather input directly from community members. As well, in phase one, both Mike and Paul attended some of your council meetings to start sharing this concept. So that, along with digital input, bill messages, were the various diverse platforms we used to collect input from the customer and, again, create those top concerns to help address prior to the board making the decision to implement in February of 24. Once February of 24 came, at that point, we had done about 24, I believe, community meetings. We kind of shifted to more targeted communication, making sure we were reaching the property owner, which in our case, so just as a reminder, the property owner is the primary person responsible for our bill. 3% of property owners elect to have a renter, tenant, property management company, somebody else, we call it internally the care of, receive the bill, but they are ultimately responsible, and the lien process that Paul shared would go against the homeowner if the care of partner did not pay the bill. So we really were running a campaign, both making sure we were communicating to those 3% of renters, property managers, et cetera, who were currently getting the bill and how this would change for them. So for example, property management companies started to change their lease agreements. And we were reaching them. You know, we were working with them through those processes. They were dedicating the time to modify it. And then we also had that targeted postcard. Sometimes we try to switch it up, right? Because some people get a postcard and they put it away or put it in the recycling right away. Others see it and are going to look at that. Whereas if they get something in an envelope, they're actually more anxious to open that thinking it's a bill, but others do. So we had envelopes going out, we had postcards going out, and then we had what they're called trifold self-mailers going out, so that we were trying to, depending on how you process your mail, we were trying to have a diverse platform so that hopefully you'd open it and read it.
Video.
Based on, yes, we also had, thank you. We also had a video. And so we were just getting ready to launch a video campaign on local stations and local social media. And then of course, social media and Nextdoor as well. So all those digital complementary platforms.
You guys did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And if you do elect to move forward, as Paul said, though, we are still going to learn from the process and we will modify. But the goal is always going to be targeted messaging and trying to reach directly to the customer who pays the bill.
Thank you. So I'm kind of along the lines of what Director Church was saying in terms of, I totally get it. I understand it. But in terms of like, after all that public outreach and we were at the 12th hour and it just seemed like those meetings and where the public were engaged in our meeting was pretty negative, and it was a pretty wide, vast, diverse population in terms of landowners or property owners to elderly to business groups. So at this point, I think that maybe we should just focus on the financial assistance program and kind of rethink before we put all this staff time and effort and money into this outreach until a later date. Thank you. Thanks.
And gosh, I'm back to Director Moore, the just from your comments earlier, the cities bill their customers, go the tax rolls, or Monterey One continue billing their customers through a third party. What would the savings be to Monterey One Water for if, what is the savings? Getting away from the third party?
So I'm gonna once again ask Rachel to step back up, but the county charges about 0.25% to bill for us. It certainly is greater with our third-party biller. I think we save what, 50,000, 75,000, but that wasn't the total we looked at last year. I think you heard a much larger number because in addition just to the hard savings, then our customer service staff, who would still be employed, obviously, would be allowed to do other things, such as doing more inspections, making sure there's accurate counts on fixture units and flows. So there was anticipation of a certain amount of revenue generation, if you will, or more accurate billings. But the hard savings, to answer your question, Marianne, was 50 grand, plus or minus?
Correct.
Per
But the
year.
benefits would be up to 400,000 once you start adding in increased revenue, along with the decrease in expenditures.
Yeah. And
In the properties being leaned to,
What?
right, less properties.
yeah, there's
right.
less properties being leaned, which we know has been an issue here in front of this board. And of course, our third-party vendor doesn't have certain customer service elements to it in terms of what they offer. So there's a number of other benefits that are not financial, if you will, beyond that 50, or as we look at total 400,000 per year.
Okay. And, thank you. And, I know I wasn't at the meeting when the vote changed. I was out of town, but I was on Zoom, so, I seen, heard like through public comment, and I brought this up at the, Budget Personnel Committee, that there was, there were people who were brought up the, homeowners association, where they had contracts and they had those costs for the sewer included in their cost already. And that there, if it went, they felt they would be double billed because as a property owner, they would be taking a, double hit. So there was some things still left up in the air. The seniors who don't have the capability, or, they're not used to electronic paying electronically, so there was just, I still did have a little bit of, I'd say I'd have to say I have some reservations with Director Church and with Director Hibino, that, it made our organization look like we didn't know what we were doing. The customers were confused, the customers were angry. So, I kind of think that maybe we should go with what was said here, maybe go out to the second part to look at approval of the implementation of customer service assistance. And for now, and maybe keep looking at this further down the road. So I know it's easier and it's better for our agency, but I'm not sure if it's gonna blow up again like it did. So just that's my thoughts.
Rachel, can you touch on the HOA thing? Because I know that's something that Marianne brought up before. I just want to make sure that we address, or give the information required.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, the public hearing that was held last June of 2024 was a protest hearing, and that was the language that was sent to customers. So of the, oh gosh, help me guys, like 50 or so people, maybe 35 to 50 people we had in the room, the directive that they received from the outreach was come if you're protesting. It wasn't come if you're supporting this cause. It was simply a protest vote. And so I think that's why in that public hearing, you heard from the selection of people you did on their concerns, because that was the directive, how they took the directive from our mailer. It was a protest hearing. And so then to kind of address your question, Marianne, on some of the comments received from HOAs, we have looked into that. And if bylaws state that an HOA can collect on behalf of their owners, we do believe there is a way to not change the billing for those HOAs. However, I would want to circle back and actually, we're doing some more digging on the exact number of HOAs and potential HOA meetings, because we also heard, so you didn't get to hear as much, but we heard from people on the other side more, right? And there were those in the HOA community who were actually grateful they didn't know how much our bill cost. They'd never seen it until they got the flyer from us starting to talk about our service and understanding who we are and what service we provide the community. So they'd never seen a sewer bill before. So there was a transparency element that actually some property owners within HOA communities valued this shift because it gave them greater control and transparency into what we're doing here as an agency, and those costs for sewer, regional conveyance and treatment. So something we can definitely continue to look into. And as I said, there may be some options. We need to run greater numbers, but each HOA essentially has a parcel number associated with, think of it like their common grounds. And there is a potential to keep the HOA billing on behalf of residents, but we would want to definitely do a little bit of due diligence before we promoted that change with them, with their bylaws, with their residents, and make sure that this actually wasn't a benefit that many of them saw with greater transparency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Marianne? You're all set? Okay, Alexis, please.
Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's comments, and I have to agree with Supervisor Church, Director Church, and Vice Chair Habino on the perception from the community. And I think last time we talked about this, constituency came and showed up, but I think that was because of the outreach that we had conducted. And although time was spent and money was spent, that was the whole reasoning why we spent it, to get feedback, to make outreach to our community. So I do think it was money well spent because community showed up that day. And although I appreciate the discussion, I just can't, I think it would give the bad impression that, again, like Director Church mentioned, that we might not know what we're doing or we're not taking into consideration the community's voice. I know for the city of Seaside, time after time, I was on the phone for days and weeks at a time, just trying to wrap my head around this and talking to constituency. But I think because it was an effective outreach, we got people to show up. We want to spend money. That was a whole purpose, to spend money, to have people give us their feedback. And I think for that, I'm grateful. I appreciate staff time. I really do. But I think for the sake of the staff and the community, it would be best not to rehash this and talk about this instead of putting more effort and time behind this again. So that's all I have to say.
I'm gonna echo that. All I know about, and I have to reconstruct some of this just listening to, and all I know is I got in trouble with this for my wife and I wasn't even elected yet. So, so that was my personal experience. But having taken office, I really appreciate and applaud. I mean, a really very specific, good faith effort to address the concerns that you heard. I mean, I think that's commendable. But the reality is the timing is not right for Salinas to take a look at this. We have a number of I think important and sensitive community issues that we have to engage in our own right, and so just the timing is just premature for our community to take a serious look at it. And even if even if the timing of second half of the year, the reality is the decision would be made now and the cat's out of the bag. And so then I think that kind of tees up
gee, didn't you hear us? Because I think the community did weigh in, which is not to say we don't take another pass at it, but just the timing for Salinas right now to tee this up. We have too many priorities. We have to engage the community on a number of issues ourselves. And, community engagement by any entity doesn't happen in a vacuum. Salinas is going to be busy over the next several months. And we need to focus on those priorities.
Okay, I will try to weigh in on some thoughts. I'll just share that frankly, I'm disappointed and I respect the points of view from everybody on the board. So there's no disrespect here. I think the whole reason why we're here today, and I just want to reference what I've heard from a couple of my colleagues here, is, not trying to rehash or end up in the same situation that we did last time. And that's exactly why we're here today. And I appreciate staff's due diligence and actually getting this on the agenda per my request, and making sure that we were in a good space before moving forward so that we didn't have to end up in that space. I have a few questions before I share some remarks. In regards to the income assistance program specifically, were there updates to the income levels? And I'm hoping that staff could speak to that. How does that work if we don't transition to the tax rolls versus keeping things, one way or the other?
Yes. So the income levels for that program do change each year based on the state's levels for low and lower income brackets. And so we actually model it off. Both the city of Monterey and the city of Salinas have really great websites that we model it off of. And it just comes straight from the state. We would update it, but not because of this conversation, because you need to update your low income levels every year.
I kind of vaguely remember there was a change though that we did to the income
Yeah.
levels last year.
Well, so the change was we added the income levels last year. So prior to last year, the program eligibility included only enrollment in the PG&E CARES program. So last year we expanded that out to basically the version of CARES that's for families. And we now can collect federal income taxes and verify income brackets based on those levels that are updated annually roughly they're updated each June. So we would use those updated numbers.
Thank you for that. I'm wondering what impacts occur hypothetically. Doesn't seem like we're going in that direction, but if we were to transition to the tax rolls and Marina Coast decided to pay their portion themselves, what kind of impact does that have on our agency in regards to the cost savings or otherwise?
So there would be a slight cost savings because we'd have, 10% of the customers being billed by Marina Coast.
And so that would be not us doing the bi-monthly billing or transitioning to the tax rolls. They'd take on whatever that cost is, however they decide to manage it.
Yeah, and I'm ballparking on the 10%. I just remember looking at some of the population information and it was at about 10%. Then there's just, frankly, we'll probably do some outreach, hopefully in coordination with Marina Coast, because we don't want to confuse all of our customers. Anything else you can think of?
Well, sir. Oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Was the question to me or to Rachel?
It was actually to Rachel
Okay,
from
sorry.
the
You
M1W
were looking
perspective.
straight at me, so.
Right. From the M1W perspective, I would say that there would probably be some confusion in the beginning. So I would anticipate increased costs, increased calls and customer communications. And then going into that 10% figure, it wouldn't just be the cost savings, but it's the payment processing. And that's what I would want to look more into, because bi-monthly billing, and so we have kind of started to, obviously given the directive, explored some of this and really gotten more granular in how much paper bills cost. And so it breaks down to not just the printing and the processing of the data. So processing of the data file, printing of it, mailing of it, and then payment processing. And I was really surprised when we started to break down the figures. That payment processing is one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Actually, more so than printing. Postage, that's always up there.
And then just kind of maybe a follow-up question for Director Moore. Is the desire to take on that regardless of whether or not we transition to the tax rolls?
Yes, it is, because it would reduce by 6 checks and 6 bills a year all of our customers' necessity. I don't know if any other members have a billing process in effect for other purposes. In our case, it's to collect for potable water and for wastewater collection services within our service area. So we already have a billing process in place. This would hardly add costs from our perspective. It's just we print another line on the bill and our customers pay that bill. And oh, by the way, we would have no lien issues at all. We simply wouldn't have any delinquencies because we have rules that will shut off your potable water if you don't pay your bill. This would now be part of your bill. So we wouldn't be seeing delinquencies. People have to have potable water.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
Do we know how many protest votes we received last year? Do you remember what that number was?
I'm just going to round for you. It was about 800.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. It was about 900
All right. And what is that as a percentage of our overall customer base?
divided by 63,000.
Yeah. 0.14%.
Okay. All right. So,
And I'll also say that, yeah, we had 30 or 50 people show up. It wasn't 50. It was 30 probably. We served 285,000 people. So just to put it in perspective.
okay. So I agree with some of my colleagues that shared in regards to the great work that staff has done. I want to really emphasize the PR effort. I think was stellar, particularly as we provided feedback and more input in regards to what we felt like we needed. So it not only did you all produce great work, but you all took our advisory and our ask without any question, and you took it and ran with it. So I really want to lean into my appreciation for the work that you've done. I think exceeding far beyond anything else that I've seen since being involved in public service. The fact of the matter is that we're not going to make everybody happy. And so if we allow a few minority folks to disrupt our ability to be able to govern and make good policy decisions and good financial decisions that allow our organization to run more efficiently for those very customers, and for the customers that maybe didn't mind, that didn't protest. The majority of them, I would offer or to the board that we're failing them. I think the feedback, and Rachel had identified this, but the feedback that we received, of course, was negative because it was a protest hearing. But to me, that seemed consistent to any Prop 218 that I've done in the city of Monterey. And my colleagues, the entire time I've been on the council for the last 6 years, have passed every Prop 218 that has come before us unanimously. And it wasn't because we didn't discount the voices of those that express concerns. We listened to them and we incorporated that feedback into the process. But it was because we're doing the business of the community, and we knew in the end that it was going to benefit everybody. I actually do have one follow-up question in regards to the customer assistance program. Part of the process, can you describe how it would remain the same versus change overall, the customer assistance program? And I'm maybe speaking a little bit further to that. I think what I recall is there was an ability for us to have a deeper level of support, particularly for renters, by transitioning to the tax rules. My assumption is that we can't do that. And actually, when we decided not to support transitioning to the tax rules last year, the funding that we had allocated to support renters, we didn't use. We weren't able to offer that service because we didn't make that transition. Could you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so the plan last year had originally been to allocate $200,000 to our annual customer assistance program. As you were all discussing the tax roll, one of the concerns came up related to renters, because I think in the beginning there was a little bit of confusion related to who pays the Monterey One Water bill. So hopefully some of that is already getting addressed just by reframing some of that misinformation. But what was also discussed was potentially expanding that program, and we would need to work with legal counsel on this, expanding that program by another 100,000 to support renters. So Central Coast Energy Services, not to be confused with 3CE, they administer an energy program, a state energy program that also helps renters. And they basically have an authorization form that says, is signed by the property owner, property management company, et cetera, that says, yes, we wrap sewer into our leases. So essentially this renter is not paying Monterey One Water, but they are paying sewer because our rent is $50 more a month because of it, rounding here. And so the thought was that you put a program in place that's parallel to that, and you could then reallocate customer service time that was going to be freed up to implement a more robust program at that point, because you would have the staff resources to do it. Because when we talked to Central Coast Energy Services, they did express that it is staff time intensive because of the verification processes. And so just really high level how it would work. And so then you could choose to allocate more non-rate revenue. We generate about 900,000, as stated in the staff report, in non-rate revenue a year. So there's some flexibility there. If you wanted to then, if you were to transition to the tax roll and want to reallocate staff time to doing that community service.
Thank you for that. So I mean, I think it just kind of further speaks to the value of us making the transition. I think when I read through all the comments, what I really hear is that this is too hard, not this is the right choice. At least that's my interpretation of it. We're not supporting we're not able to help as much the most vulnerable folks in our community. We're not doing good governance by making this organization more efficient and reducing the cost to our ratepayers. Mayor Carbone specifically spoke to seniors paying electronically and the challenges associated with that. I think, as I understand it, folks can still pay their property tax through check. I know that's an option to be. I think what I'm hearing is a lot of why we can't and shouldn't do it without really much substance in regards to why it's a no. I think Mayor Donahue maybe have got the closest in regards to the work that you all have going on in your city. I won't pretend to know what that is, and I can respect that. The fact of the matter is that we all have stuff going on. There's a lot of work for all of our jurisdictions to do, for all of our communities to do. And so to say we can't do something because it's too hard, just to me seems completely unacceptable and a failure to our ratepayers. So my question to the board, for those that that had identified this not being the right time. So maybe what I'm hearing from you all is that it's the right thing to do, but just not right now. And maybe I'm reading that wrong. I just ask you, when does it look like the right time? Because I think it would be helpful to let staff know. And if it's truly, the answer is truly, no, we don't want to do this, period, then I think maybe helpful to articulate that versus saying when this can come back. So I heard Mayor Donahue speak to even later this year is not a good time. So do we bring this back next February and pick this conversation back up then? I just kind of open it up to the board for additional thoughts, feedback, and that specific question.
Chair, thank you for
Please.
that. I can right off the bat tell you, I am not supportive of even this coming back again for this discussion. And I think you mentioned something about helping the vulnerable community in the constituency that hasn't been heard. And I just want to let you know that my constituency in the city of Seaside were people that weren't able to make the meeting, people that said I had to work, I had to care for a loved one. I didn't have enough time to come out here. So I am looking for those. I'm looking out for those communities and I'm speaking out for those constituencies. And I just have one more question. What was the time frame in which we sent notice to the community that they had enough time to come and protest? Like, what was the time frame?
Last year?
Yeah.
Was that the 30 days?
45 days.
The law is a reasonable amount of time actually on this because it doesn't parallel the 218. It's governed through the California Health and Safety Code. So we mailed them in May.
Which
And-
was 30 days, about 30 days.
Yeah.
Well, we mailed it 60 days ahead of time.
But by the time they got it, I think we heard from a number of people that they got them late and things
Yes.
like that.
And
So-
we got 900 protests.
Correct.
Okay.
And so part of the plan, if you do, I'm not sure if we had it in the staff
It's in
report.
here.
Is it in there?
Yeah.
But part of the plan this year, if you were to continue having this conversation into the next month and we bring back the more detailed implementation plan, we would immediately start messaging about the public hearing. And that's what we would message is the public hearing. And we would do 2 mailings on the public hearing and the first one would go out April 1st. So right after next month, we'd be ready to go and we would just promote the public hearing. We wouldn't say things like, your billing is changing and have people investing their time and resources into the change. We would first just promote the public hearing and then July 1st, after doing 2 bilingual notices on the public hearing, July 1st, we would really kick off a diverse bilingual outreach campaign, helping bring the customer along through the transition, showing them what the property tax bill would look like, where it would be, all those pieces we never got to last year.
Thank you for that. So I just want to make another point that within 30 days, we received 900 protests. And when the hearing happened, we had roughly around 60 to 50 individuals at the meeting. So I think that speaks to me volumes of the people that had time to come out here and speak and the 900 protests. That's a heavy amount. And although we tried to sort of, I don't want to say dilute or just say it was 0.14%, that's still a percentage of the constituency that didn't want that. So I just want to leave that out there. So again, just reinforcing, I'm not supportive of this coming back.
Yeah, I kind of take sharp exception that just looking around the room and I'm just getting to know folks and folks I know, the notion that it's too hard, that's not the deal. But not having been here this past year, but following a little bit and listening to Kent's comments, the simple fact is a lot of good effort was made. And at the end of the day, whether it was confusion, I disagree, and then the folks who can't get there, the notion that there was complete unanimity and it's clear in everyone's mind that this is the right thing to do, but we find it too hard. I don't buy that. As far as the timing, what I do know is stepping into a new council and the things that we have to deal with in Salinas, and very, very frankly, we would engage the community on our own on this. You're obviously, this board is free to go in and do community engagement, but after the reaction that we inherited, the notion that the mayor's office and the council wouldn't be in conversation with the community, we would be. And I'm simply saying, and you're right, every city has critical issues in front of them. We don't have a monopoly on that. I happen to, the nature of some of the things we have to deal with, this could even just get caught in the congestion of the other things where we happen to be engaging with our community. I understand you don't want to that the board would not want to push it, or the staff would not want to push it too far down the road, but as we start the new year, we heard something last year and just
we're going to bring it right back. That kind of tells me it's not a question of heart. It's like, well, we're going to do what we want to do anyway. And so that's not listening to the community either. I mean, this wasn't everybody got it, but, Selena stood in the way. I mean, I'm just hearing that there's just still some work to do. And it could be in a couple of months, we're ready to look at it. But the simple fact is, if we say we're going to move forward tonight, then that means we've said we're moving forward, as opposed to what I think I generally heard is, this needs to settle just a little bit. I understand there's a sense of urgency. If we have a vendor problem, that's a different conversation, and maybe that needs to be addressed. Or, I certainly, appreciating Tom's comments. I mean, I'm going to go back to City Hall and go, what kind of billing capacity do we have to do similar things? I mean, I just don't know the answer to the question, but I just feel tonight's not the night to say in March we're going to approve it. Now, March might be the time, and say in April we're going to approve it. I don't know, but tonight's not the night where I feel comfortable, or the city feels comfortable moving forward on this.
Please.
So first, I want to ask Paul, what's the downside to this for the cities not doing it? It sounds like it's an all or nothing situation. And then the second thing I want to ask is, when we communicated out, I remember getting the mailers, and, to me, I thought it seemed like a pretty fair thing to do. But what was the benefit to the end user? I mean, were we reducing the bill? Were we just not raising the bill? I mean, what kind of financial implications were there for that? But also, Chair, the way I read the agenda report, all we're voting on tonight is whether or not we do the assistance program or not. Is that correct?
It also includes giving direction on how to move forward, giving direction
Okay.
moving forward to the transition.
So there's two motions within.
Yeah, I think it's more direction on that part, but the motion would be more for the customer assistance program.
Okay.
So to your two questions, so the downside to the cities that don't do the billing, the downside of the city is, if Monterey One Water were to move to the tax rolls, either the city would move along with us to the tax rolls for their billing, or you would set up your own billing process, or if you have one, utilize your existing one. So there is an increased cost, obviously, for every member entity to set up their own billing department. That's the one downside as I see it. In terms of the benefits to the end users, yeah, the number that we put out there, well, there's a number of benefits. One is there's more flexibility through the county's paying system. Yeah, you do have Easy Smart Pay, so you could do it monthly. Obviously, that's the entire property tax, not just the sewer portion. There's the 100,000 or 400,000 delta to our budget, which over a 10-year period is $4 million, which in theory, the bills wouldn't go up $4 million because we'd have extra revenue. We're a balanced budget. It's revenue, expenses. Another third benefit that we saw was the not going on the tax or on the liens. So when people are delinquent, we put them on liens. And we've heard it for the 11 years I've been here, people rolling in here saying it's wrong to go on the lien, to lien our properties for this. So right or wrong, that's just the general feeling that we've heard. Granted, a minority of people, just like the minority of people that oppose
The
this.
0.14.
Yeah. But those are some of the benefits to the end user.
Okay.
And probably not comprehensive, but a good start.
Thank you.
I think Dr. Moore's first, and then.
Okay, thank you very much. So I hate to be Donald Downer, but it's fairly clear there isn't support on the board to bring this in March. Now, Paul, are we not now back to billing paper bills to all our customers 6 times a year, using the same company that we had been using before, more or less on an emergency basis. So,
Yes.
and we can really only do this once a year because this has to be set up with the county tax authorities in early summer, period. So if we were to ever go to the tax rolls, postpone it now, we're definitely postponing it for at least a year.
Correct.
That being said, I think we need to, so now we're stuck with the same problem that motivated us to go down this road 2 years ago. So let's start putting our thinking caps on and thinking about some other things we can do. Maybe we bring this back next year. Okay, fine. Or maybe we never bring it back again. But let's, in the meantime, start thinking about things we can do that will. Obviously, this is an elephant. And how do you eat an elephant? Right? 1 teaspoon at a time. All right. So I won't belabor it. We'll offer up Marina Coast to take a bunch of your billing aches and pains off of Monterey One Water. I'm sure there will be some minor cost to that. I'll leave that up to staff to work out with Marina Coast staff. So that would be a teaspoon. What else can we do? Can we, well, wait a minute, aren't we getting a new ERP system in, which might have better internet-facing bill-paying options for some of our customers? And maybe we can have a marketing campaign to get more of our customers onto autopay. We've got a room full of 10 directors here. Please put your thinking caps on and suggest items to staff.
So depending which way the board goes with this, which, I'm counting, I can count to 10. We would certainly reconvene and figure out what's the best way to serve our customers. As always, yes, we have an ERP moving forward. Part of this has integral to this discussion was what we move forward with the ERP and how it moves forward. In terms of having a vendor problem, yeah, one could consider we have a vendor problem. Are the bills getting out there? Yeah, they're getting out there. In Seaside specific, Alexis's predecessor, they received a bunch of bills that were to the wrong, from the wrong organization. That caused quite the stir a few years ago. Can we resolve that? Absolutely. It's truly just a timing perspective. We didn't move forward to try to find another third-party vendor because we didn't have time. So we were very thankful that they took us back. Would we do something different in the future? It depends. If it's for 1 or 2 years, maybe not. If it's for 5 years, yeah, I think we should. I think we owe that to our customers. So we staff and me personally feel this is good governance to move this direction. If we choose not to, we'll do something better for our customers, and that's fine. But it is once a year, as Tom mentioned. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be bringing it back in April. We would roll into the following year, or never.
Supervisor Church.
I want to understand, we have 185,000 customers. Is that where we're serving?
Approximately, yeah.
But not everyone can vote, right?
Every property owner can, which
Okay.
is the
So-
65,000 accounts that we have.
And so that 900 was out of 285,000, that percentage of 0.1, or what you were saying,
65,000.
65,000?
Yeah.
So.
Which is that
It was
1.4% or
1 point, okay, you
0.14,
said-
whatever
you said
it was.
point, you said 0.1.
Yeah.
4, so I want to make sure it was really
Yeah.
1.4.
Yeah, yeah.
As we understood, okay. So that's why I just want to clarify what we're looking at there. The thing to point out, and I think Alexis kind of addressed it a little bit here too, is realistically, when we put things out to vote, especially in the local issues, most people don't vote. They don't vote, if it's just a city or a school board, election. That's why they've been all consolidated so much. And there's a real difficulty in getting some people engaged. Some people just even on presidential elections don't even vote, or they don't even register. And yet they're part of our customers. So they really don't care. And yeah, okay, it's important. If you don't care, you don't care. I mean, that's the same thing. You can put a vote yes, you can put a vote no, or you can just not care. It always, this has significance out of that. But to me, I mean, seeing 900 people and 50 come up at a meeting is a significant opposition, because it's along the same line as that for every person. You get a letter when you're an elected official or from somebody, or an email from somebody, and you can pretty much think there's probably 20 other people that are thinking that way too. And this is kind of the same line. Now, I'm not opposed to this in itself, but I will go right back to, again, it's on a timing. And it isn't just the people that oppose this that I think are, that we're addressing to in this. We're also talking to the people that seem to be okay with it, but it didn't happen. And so now we're going back again. And my whole problem with this is, again, with timing, as the other directors have pointed out, it just now isn't the right time. A year hasn't even passed, and it's not going to look clear. It's going to look confusing. And I don't think that's the role we should really be having. I don't know when is the right time. I mean, really, I don't have a crystal ball to say this year, that moment. But what I can say is right now, this year, it isn't the right time. It's too fresh. I think we did do a pretty good outreach job onto it. Probably could, learn something from it, and could learn where we could focus on a few other things if we were to do this again. But it's got to have a little time pass, because this was up for it and then it failed, and we reached out a lot, and I just don't think our message is going to be clear to the people out there. And it isn't just being fiscally responsible. That's a huge thing, but it's being sensitive to what we do in serving people. And I don't think our message is clear. I think our message will be muddled because of what happened last year. And that's why I'm not comfortable with now. And I really do disagree too. I don't have heard anybody express that. It's not a hard thing to do. I mean, we've got the process to go. It's just the timing. Christian, thanks.
Please.
I've got to say, I'm not opposed to this as well. I understand the financial ramifications of it. I would like to see, though, because I know you said it was $50,000 in savings, but then 400 in a cumulative fashion. Is seeing kind of a line item of where you came up with that 400. That'd be kind of nice to see. And then as well as is being able to see or to know about other municipalities that have gone through this change in the past, I don't know, maybe 5 years or so, maybe kind of have a little case study of what their experience was, wherever that may be, Bay Area or Southern California. I'm sure it's happened. So it'd be interesting to see that. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Anybody else? So again, I hear the feedback. I tend to agree with what you're saying, Supervisor Church. I think that it might be too soon, and I think that's being expressed by the majority of the board. I guess my point wasn't really about saying that it needed to be done right now in this moment, but more of expressing a plan, a vision in regards to how we're going to do good governance. And that's what I'm focused on. And it's not about, I wasn't expressing my arguments to just focus on good financing. It was thinking about people and the humanity, the human side of the work that we do. And that's why we're in the roles that we're in. And I think we do that by expanding our customer assistance program, by saving our ratepayers money, so that when we do look at doing the rate study next year,
this year,
this year, that we can potentially look at maybe not increasing them as much because there'd be a cost savings. So, you know, I get it. I will say that I didn't, and I'm still a little bit mystified, from some on the board that are reflecting on the feedback that was received from some of the constituents, because nothing that I heard. Oh, one question before I finish the statement. Were the people that were present at that night, were they also able to vote? Right, like they could vote that night, or just wanted to add a clarification.
Yes. Yeah, they
I
could.
guess it's neither here nor there. It wouldn't make much of a difference. It was 30 or 40 folks. But I think the point that I'm making is the comments and the feedback that we received, whether they were in the community meetings or whether there were folks that called in or were present that night for the meeting, all of that, all of the messaging that I heard was either fear mongering, misinformation, or lies. The information that was coming out just wasn't true. And so if we're basing how we're going to govern and do the work of this agency, I'm not saying don't listen to people. I definitely want to listen to them. But if people are basing their arguments to me off of things that just aren't true, it's really hard to really fully appreciate why we would detract from moving forward for those reasons. And then final comment, I appreciate the additional feedback that the vice chair gave for when we do loop this back around. I do know that staff, when they originally presented this, there was some information in regards to an evaluation of how other like similar agencies do it. And I think that it might be helpful to relook at that information. I think Mike has some thoughts there.
Yeah, so we were in the process of kind of doing a survey and seeing how many different entities around the state had taken this on, you know, going the tax rolls, things like that. And so we got a fresh example, I think, from Vallejo. And so we were trying to effort to set up a meeting with the staffer that helped shepherd that through. We just didn't have enough time. So yeah, we've got a recent example.
There's a couple.
Yeah, so we can provide that for you next.
Okay. And then just to close this out, go ahead, Tom.
Paul, could you just, I know this has been discussed before in connection with the customer service program, but would you please specify the non-revenue sources that we're going to possibly be using for the customer assistance program coming up?
Yeah, for the most part, and I'll look to Lawrence to clarify if he can, it's a lot of penalties and liens and that sort of revenue.
So just for the record and the public, we can't use, by law, we cannot use rate revenue for customer assistance, only these additional things. Okay. Through the chair, can I move approval of the proposed customer assistance program?
Okay, there's a motion.
I'll second.
The motion and seconded. I don't think we've gone out to the public yet, so I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Anybody online wish to speak on this item? All right, I'm seeing none. Anybody in the room? So I'll bring it back to the board. I just had one final comment that before we vote on the motion. My sense is that there's general agreement that we hold off for now, but there's still interest in wanting to consider this. So just for a point of clarification for staff, is there maybe some general consensus around maybe looking at a year from now, we can just put it back on, doing a litmus test to see where we are, similar to like we did tonight, just to see if that's good timing to do it. And if not, we delay further, that's fine. I think just kind of getting a sense of what do next steps look like here. If we're saying, if the argument that we're saying is now's not the right time, I just kind of want to make sure we don't lose sight of this.
I guess, and I don't know if it's, I don't want us to put money out onto something of significance out of here, but I'm just trying to get an idea of really, if we were able to survey or somehow what our, what our customers really wanted out there. And I'm afraid it could come up to a bunch of money, and make it prohibitive, but because what we've done here is this, there's a lot of people involved, 285,000, 65,000 property owners, residences, businesses. And we're only hearing from a few. And there's that silent majority out there, or whatever you want to call it, that can't go to meetings, have an opinion, but have lives that they have to fulfill. And I just really wish I knew if there was a way that could really judge exactly where the public really stands on that, outside of listening just to the loudest voices.
Yeah, and what's interesting for me is it's more than just checking a box of, do you like it or not? It's also trying to get a sense of what makes them come to their conclusions that they do, right? And I think that's kind of part of the point that I'm making in regards to the folks that we've heard from. It wasn't based off of factual statements. It was misinformation. But
So something we have been discussing, but we have not done, is a customer survey. And I'm sure you and your cities do that periodically. It's a subset of your customers, hopefully statistically significant. Oftentimes there are a number of questions on customer service and rates and everything else, but there's always a few that you can add in on your own, as you well know, on topics of the day, whether it's things you're dealing with at the council right now or something like this. So if the board would like to pursue something like that in the future, certainly I, as executive officer, would like to understand what our customers are thinking on a variety of topics to make sure we're heading the right direction and to tailor our strategic plan towards that. Is something that we would build into the next fiscal year's budget.
Yeah, I would say I'd be supportive of that, because I think, as you point out, there's a lot of issues that could get feedback on, and it could serve not just this purpose, but a lot of different purposes. And when was the last time we did one, or have we ever done?
I have not done one since I've been here. I
long
think
you been here?
Lyra, 11 years.
7 years. Okay. Do you know if we ever did one before that?
Lyra had mentioned that I think we had done one in the past. I do need to check in with her.
It's good to,
Take the pulse.
another one after 50 years or so.
I don't think Larry's been here that long, has she?
Comment.
Any other comments, please?
I think that's a great suggestion. And I'm sitting here wondering how I could canvass and go to my residents to talk to them, because we're small enough. If I could get some information like a survey, I would go door to door and see what my community's thinking.
Anybody else? Please.
I'm going to say, just like in terms of a survey, just from personal experience of receiving them, 2-3 page long surveys, I think just the shorter the better, and the reason why, and then maybe disguising it as a bill or putting it in with the bill.
And what might want to do as well is I agree with you entirely. You don't want too long of a survey. That scares away most people. But there are people that like to take surveys too. And maybe there could be an option of a longer online one as well, if somebody who does want to go through and put their opinion in, and it won't have as many people into it, but it could be helpful.
If it's something the board is open to, we will certainly huddle up and check costs, bring it, put in the budget, and so on. Ones I've done in the past, we've generally hired a firm or consultant to run it, who do understand the needs of a community and how to reach them, as well as the statistical significance and how to phrase questions.
Anybody else? Okay. And for my final comment here, I just want to say I came in a little hot. I recognize that, so I love you all. I'm trying to. I'm come from the mindset of like trying to get things done. I'm trying to move things down the ball field, and I appreciate the healthy conversation to make sure that we're recognizing and appreciating all sides. So thank you all for this and bearing with me.
After you call for the vote, I'll have a question.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Please.
So sort of back to the, what do we do now? I think staff has a fair amount of direction, but could we possibly get some head nods to see if the board would give direction to staff to maybe put on, I don't know, medium priority, some discussions with Marina Coast about Marina Coast taking over billing for Monterey One Water? Any,
Tom, it's not on the agenda. So.
it's
Not
part of
agenda item.
billing?
I can bring, could I bring something back
You can
to
bring
discuss
something back,
it
but you
at budget
can't- you can't
personnel?
Take a head nod and give staff direction to do that.
Okay.
Since the way it's phrased on the agenda.
That's why
Alright.
we have attorneys. Thank you.
Yes,
for
thank you
that.
very much.
Keeping us out of trouble. Alrighty. Let me just find myself here. I think,
Good information.
sorry, I'm
13.
13. Thank you. Informational items number 13, Pure Water Monterey updates.
Thank you, Chair. And we will take the Vice Chair's advice and make this shorter the better. Okay. Chai will be putting up a couple slides to focus on the construction of expansion. I just want to acknowledge March 13th is actually the 5th anniversary of Pure Water Monterey starting up. And since that started up, 17,500 acre feet of drinking water has been produced. Also appreciate Marina Coast Water District has helped that water get to the injection wells. And of course, Marina Coast Water District also sells recycled water to the 2 golf courses up on the hill there. So again, as far as expansion goes, if you look at your screens, I'll have to look at this screen to try and visualize what you're seeing. We have 2 construction packages. Advanced Water Purification Plant Expansion, that's a $17 million package. Injection well phase 4, that's a $25 million package. All right. The plant job is at about 65% complete. We expect to start up components of that project in about 3, maybe 4 months. The injection well project is at about 70% complete, but we're about 7 months away from starting up that part of the project. But the project overall is on schedule, on budget for this fall for both packages being started up. We see the permit kind of arriving just when we finish construction of the injection well project. First slide, please. So this again is the advanced water purification facility. If you haven't seen it, it's on the regional treatment plant property. Most of the action for that $17 million package happens in and around this plant. Next slide. This project has kind of transitioned from us being worried about, are the big pieces of equipment, electrical equipment, going to get there on time? Now it's about plugging them in. We also happen to have the day-to-day project manager, Allison, runs this project on a day-to-day basis. Jose Guzman, the operations manager, they're dealing with what will be ultimately over 60 different little shutdowns of this plant, 4, 8, 24-hour shutdowns. Very complex. For example, this particular process unit, this is the reverse osmosis treatment skid. If you can see the rainbow there, kind of acknowledging that this part of the project is blessed and proceeding with the powers that be. This is a $400,000 piece of equipment that took over a year to get to this point. This photograph is actually December 27th. So happy birthday, Pure Water Monterey. We've got a little video of this piece of equipment being shoehorned inside this building. Chai? This is almost an hour elapsed to get this in. I think you can see Allison walks across the camera. So once the skid's in place, it still has to be plumbed up. It has to be wired up for all the valves and instrumentation. Okay, so again, it's like open heart surgery 60 times for these guys because they have to make water while we're doing this expansion. All right, let's move on to the injection well phase 4 project. For some of you, you haven't seen this slide. The blue lines are existing facilities. They're mostly pipelines, but if you look in the lower left-hand corner, That's what we call our western well field. So we have 4 injection wells, again, that have been running for 5 years continuously. All right. The new work is the red line with the 2 yellow dots. So we're adding 2 new deep injection wells. They're about 5 million a pop. The work that's been completed so far is there's a tunnel line. We installed a line via tunneling between the western well field and the eastern well field. So that's in there. That was more than half a mile of 20-inch pipe. Next slide, please. And you can see, looking back, you can see right at the bottom right of this is the new facilities going in. And then there's that dirt road. That's the kind of hill that we tunneled through to get to the existing well field. Next slide. This is a typical deep injection well site. This is the wellhead piping. To the left are what we call the backwash pumps. Each pump is the 700 horsepower motor. And then there's the pump column, which is 600 feet down in the 1,000 foot deep well. Each one of those is about 770 grand. Okay, right now they're being stored at our drillers facility to ultimately install them about 2 or 3 months away from that happening. Next slide, please. Again, a big part of the project, as referenced by Director Thompson. This was about 3 months ago. We had 2 miles of 24-inch pipe. All of that pipe is now in the ground. So if you remember that red line going up to the reservoir, next slide. This gives you an aerial view of that path taken. So you've kind of got the zig and the zag. At about 2 o'clock in this particular picture, that's the tank farm that Marina Coast operates. They have 1 potable water tank up there, and then they have a recycle water tank that we all share. Okay, so that pipe has now been installed from those tanks all the way down to our new well field. And as, again, Director Thompson acknowledged, we're about to make that connection, working out some interagency issues. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions?
I've
Good, please.
one quick question on those, on the reverse osmosis, on that gigantic skid. How often does that need to be? I mean, are there cartridges or is it media, or how does that, what's a life?
We have the operations manager, Jose Guzman, right here. Jose, how often do you do a clean in place?
Come on up to the mic.
He makes it look easier than it is.
Chair and members of the board. A typical life for an element of an RO system is 5 to 7 years. We're at about that pace of 5 to 7 years right now. It kind of scales up your CIP, the clean in place process. So you start with, typically every quarter, maybe you can stretch it every 4 or 5 months. And then as that frequency increases, right now we're doing it quarterly, you can also change the ingredients of your chemical, make more aggressive, higher temperature, longer soaks. So we're pretty much on track on probably getting close to that upper end of the 7-year. We actually recently did a CIP on train 3, and we sent a couple of elements back to Florida for an autopsy. And that provides some information on, how much longer life you have in your elements and if you have to do a change to the recipe for your cleaning. So we're kind of doing better than average. Some folks actually just operate almost like to fail, where you get it as dirty as you can, and then they have an exchange system where they send them back to kind of get quote unquote refurbished. But we're actually trying to maximize the life. That's a little bit more of a costly practice. So we're trying our best to extend it as long as possible.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? All right, thank you for the presentation. And next we have board member comments, reports.
I think you
14.
Sorry, 14 staff reports. I'm gonna get this right.
None for me, but I'll look around. Tammy,
I've
Mike?
got some. So I'd like to thank three groups. First of all, our maintenance and utilities team basically not only are handling the day-to-day operations, keeping all of the equipment running from the pump stations to the injection facilities, but also helping. They spend a lot of time of their time in meetings for the expansion. So they're helping Allison and the engineering team, and they sit in on meetings, et cetera. So really appreciate their help there. Also, our compliance team. Now is the season that all the annual reports are due. So they're busy with all the data gathering, et cetera, and submitting reports and working with operations. And then thirdly, our operations group. And I'd like to defer to Jose, if you'd like to come up here. He's going to give an update as well. We'll keep it short. Thanks, Jose, for all your group's efforts.
Yes, thank you, Tammy. I have a couple quick updates. As of January 30th, we started up the tertiary plant. We actually, demand crept up on us because it was a dry winter. So we worked very closely with our vendors and our internal maintenance team to kind of put that PM schedule in the high gear. So we're making water for tertiary treatment. We had a couple of shutdowns with the recent storms, but we think that moving forward, the interruptions to that facility will be minimal. Irrigation is really starting to pick up and the growers are taking some water. Also to recognize staff, on Friday, this past Friday, the California Water Environment Association Monterey Bay section held its annual awards banquet. And we had two staff receive recognition. One was Olivia Woolery, who is our interim lab supervisor. She was recognized as the lab person of the year. And another one was J.R. Shamelbide, one of our maintenance mechanics that has been cross-trained in AWPF. He actually fabricated kind of like a cage support system for our auto strainers to make it easier to do maintenance on them and to wash them. So he was awarded the Gadgets and Gimmicks award. So we'll hopefully have that put into our pipeline update and everyone in the plant will get to see it. So that's it for me.
Yeah, at Recycle Water, was it Thursday last week? Yeah,
2 weeks ago.
really. Man, time flies. I told that I was going to go up to Sacramento and make some visits. So I just want to give a quick update. So we got to go up there, and with the help of Jamie Miner, our lobbyist, she set up a power pack day. We met with a staff member from the California Energy Commission. Really wish I would have had my buddy Matt with me, but they were really engaged about what we were trying to do as far as the energy reliability is concerned, and the gas conditioning and all that. Great contact, gave us some good information for potentially searching for some grant funds. Also met with a representative from PG&E. Obviously, if we're into this space and potentially maybe providing gas to them down the road, just getting a good connection with them. We met with one of the policy advisors for Speaker Robert Rivas. Senator Laird was great to give us a little bit of his time, as well as Dawn Addis. We also had a lunch meeting with the staff member from Division of Financial Assistance, as well as a meeting with the Division of Drinking Water. So really great time. And I was telling one of our board members that I was sitting in Dawn Addis's office, waiting to go see her and just kind of looking through the bookcase there and stumbled on this book called Humbled. And I don't know if anybody knows anything about that, but one of our board members is the author. And I wanted to know if anybody knew who that would be. It's Glenn Church. Wrote this book in 2020. So really encourage you to read it. It's about how California's Monterey Bay escaped industrial ruin. So maybe he can talk about that.
Only to burn later.
We don't burn books in Monterey County.
Did he sign that?
I don't mean the
Not yet.
book. I mean,
Oh, yeah. The environment. Oh, man.
That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, staff. Appreciate that. Seaside Pump Station. Was that?
Oh, no, not Matt. You want him to do Seaside Pump Station or you want to?
Yeah, we just did the fix and we stayed.
He's like that way.
I'll take it.
Okay.
So you may recall that at the Seaside Pump Station, the transformer there had failed. And so we were running for several weeks off of grid power, essentially off of standby generator. So largely Tammy's group led by Daryl Harris, they reestablished the damaged what's called a bus duct, which conducts the electrical power from the transformer into the pump station. They rebuilt it really rapidly, and PG&E, fortunately, the transformer wasn't actually failed, so they're now running on grid power, thankfully. Meanwhile, progress continues on construction of the upgrade to the Seaside pump station. And so we're back on track. We were able to pull out all the portable generators that were kind of in the way of the construction activity there. So everything's back on track.
Thanks for that update.
I think Lauren.
Was there,
Oh,
So, yeah, so Sand City Pump Station? But, no, the comment was, did we get, a fire hydrant or some water, connection?
No.
We're currently working with California American Water Company to extend a new water service to that
Okay.
station to reestablish fire protection at that station. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
we should have like a,
In progress.
She said, get it wrong.
we should have
Get
a,
it
we
right.
should have a day where we all wear like our jerseys from our different agencies. See how many constituents we can get to show up. All right. Anything else from staff?
yes.
Please.
I want to give the update on the fiscal year 2024 year-end closing audit. And we are almost there, around 80% done. And once we get the financial statement coming from the auditor, then we'll start preparing the annual comprehensive financial report in early March. And hopefully we'll present that to the board by the end of March. So this will conclude the FY 24 audit, and then we'll be change the gear a little bit, working on the FY 25 and 26 budget.
Perfect. Thank you for the updates. And with that, we will now go to item number 15, which is board member comments reports. Any takers? Please.
The one thing I want to say, just so I can go home tonight, is that my wife was also an author.
For the record. Fair. Anybody else? All right, public comments on closed session items. There's one item. It's for conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. Anybody online? All right, anybody in person? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed session. Thanks, everybody. Why don't we?
It's now 8:35. The board has adjourned from closed session and there's no reportable action. Chair Williamson, I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
Yeah, meeting.